I love that song. When I hear that song, it means that something big is going to happen, like Coffee with Guillem live. Hello from Biggleswade. That's why I'm wearing all these clothes. It's not that warm. It's actually raining outside. I introduce you to my new flat. It's where my UK base is now. And it's 1 minute past 11 here. I don't know what time it is where you are. But I'm glad that you're here, because we are going to be talking for about 20, 25 minutes about whatever you want to talk about. And also what I would like to talk about. Starting with, it's time to give a little homage to somebody that I know very well and who's doing very well. And that's Enzo Maresca. Look at the table. Chelsea second. And he says, but we're not in to fight for the win for the Premier League title. We're not ready for it. What does it mean? It means obviously that the project has just started. That perhaps in 2-3 months' time we'll be talking differently. Yes, he hasn't got the demands of the Champions League, say, even though they're still in Europe. But the team is very young. You know the plan of Chelsea, and that's something I found out through talking to directors of football, to the ownership, to Enzo himself. And I did that, talking to them at a time when everybody was having a go at Chelsea. Oh, they've got too many players, and how they're going to get this together. And Enzo hasn't got any experience. But I could see something was happening. And what I was told is that Chelsea have got a clear plan. Is there plenty of players? Enzo doesn't know. He's got 23 players, 24 players in his squad. That's it. This is what he's been dealing with. Of course, there was a series of decisions that I had to make with the squad. And Enzo is not the one taking the decisions on his own. It's the club that basically want him to be the coach of the players they give to him. He's got to say two things. The only player that he perhaps wasn't so convinced about, Joao Felix, the club said, please take him. We know you're going to make him better. And look, I think you started to see glimpses of what he can do. The rest of the players that have come in are the players that he wanted. So he's got that say in it. And they've asked him, if you want a player, just let me know, but it has to be, let the club know, but he has to be under 24. Because they want to create this squad of hungry players that have got the ability to improve. That's very important, and Enzo is doing that. And also, they are long contracts and paid very low compared to the Premier League. So if they don't work, it's easy to get rid of. But if they do work, as it has happened with Nicholas Jackson and with Cole Palmer, then they renew the contracts and make the contracts more attractive. In this project of Chelsea, there's one thing that I've got a question mark about. What happens if there are 3 or 4 or 5 players that become really good, like Palmer is, and they get contracts equivalent to the best players in the Premier League, but still got a lot of youngsters who have got very low contracts? Is the gap between those better players and the not so good players, is it going to be too big? Is it going to mean that the better players, annoyed by only having young players that are developing, decide to go somewhere else where it's full of internationals, full of players that are already mature? We will see. But at the moment, it's working really well. Cam is saying Chelsea squad size and talent pool finally coming good with Maresca's time there now, and figuring out the style and best starters. The style is clear for him, and he wants to continue with that style. Spectacular, dominating, having the ball, high tempo, transitions if necessary, but control of the game as much as possible. So he's still not the Maresca steam yet, but it's getting there. Meanwhile, it's very, very interesting. Apologies about the network, which is a bit loggy. There's a reason for it. The internet has not been installed in this apartment yet, which means that next week it'll be better because it'll be installed. Literally, I just moved in yesterday. But this is what we've got with Maresca. What is he doing that is a little bit different? Just concentrating on the players that he's got and make them better. Make them better by constantly correcting. Something that Pep Guardiola is very famous for. Constantly correcting, but also looking after the players, giving them confidence, and giving everybody a chance. So that's what Enzo Maresca is doing, and it's all working out at the moment. I think he's warning people, let's see, this is a young player, a young team. We don't really know how far we can go. And perhaps, as he says, they're not ready to be consistent, which means that they may not challenge for the title at the end. Talking of the Premier League, and talking of Chelsea, and talking of consistency, I think it's time to talk about Manchester City. Dan Davenport says, ¿Cómo estás? I'm all right. Always stressed when I'm in front of a camera, but I'll try not to look so. So, Dan for Banbury, do you think Pep may have taken Man City as far as he can? Dan, what does that mean? Because what we've seen with the best managers ever is that they're able to overcome difficulties, and if necessary, starting a new squad or a new group of players that will give him what he requires. What I do believe, and probably that's what you mean, is that perhaps Pep Guardiola has taken this group of players to the limit. And now I want to tell you a little bit, which I did a thread on Blue Sky and on Twitter and on my social networks on Manchester City. People are saying, oh yeah, excuses of the injuries. No, the problem of the injuries and injuries that have been to key players is that you cannot create a foundation. A foundation cannot exist because when you try, for instance, Akanji as a holding midfielder because Rodri is injured, and Akanji gets injured, or is the only centre-back, he's got to play as a centre-back. All right, well, what do we do? And then you have to start improvising. So perhaps the criticisms could go to the team in the club, really, in the last couple of years, that they haven't reinforced certain parts of the pitch, perhaps the full-back position, perhaps the holding midfield position. But certainly when injuries come to big players, then you just cannot get a continuity. That mixed with the fact that they won a lot means that that perhaps the belly's full, and that Manchester City and Pep Guardiola requires all the types of players, younger, willing to be molded, willing to be part of the demanding world of Pep Guardiola, from scratch, if you like, and take away some of the key players that have been with Manchester City and that perhaps they're not giving them as much as they require. Kevin De Bruyne, will he ever get to his level? Possibly not. Bernardo Silva has been trying to go away from City 2 or 3 years. Is it time for him to move out? Perhaps yes. It was very strange, and this goes back to this idea of relaxation after winning so much, that Gundogan was brought in. Because yes, he's useful, but is that the kind of player that Manchester City want? Okay, he's exposed as a holding midfielder, but is he the kind of player that Manchester City need in this particular time? He's helping, but maybe they should be looking for those younger, hungrier players. It is one of those situations that have not happened in the previous 7 years, which 7 seasons, which means that's why they won, because they didn't have this injury crisis. But on top of all the crisis, on top of all the injuries, the Rodri one is key, because in the past, there was a play of reference, which was the number 9. He was in the box fighting with the centre-backs, and balls were put into him for him to finish. That's how football used to go. That reference point has moved now to holding midfielder position. And without that player, the player that understands that role, that fills the gaps, that starts attack, that destroys attacks, that decides the line of pressure, and everybody around follows, if he goes, the whole building collapses. And that's what's happening with Manchester City. So it's one of those situations that do not get resolved in 1 or 2 weeks, that perhaps will not be resolved this season. And it looks to me like Manchester City is a little bit like what Manchester City were in the first season of Pep Guardiola. Okay, they've identified the problems. Now they've got to go out and get solutions. And should we stay with the Premier League and have one question if on Liverpool, for instance, because of course I saw them. Arita Bosse says Slot plays almost similar style of football as Klopp. What is he doing differently? That's making the team win. I watched them against Girona. There's a reels there in the socials. If you want to go to my timeline that shows you my day out in Girona in the Montilivi Stadium watching Girona Liverpool. And what I saw was a team that didn't play very well. Girona played very well for an hour. But there are things that you see in that game and in other games. I saw them as well live against Aston Villa, for instance, in Anfield. What you see is a team that differences to Klopp team, that they manage their energy very well. So they go 1-0 up. They just don't keep going at it. They just calmly control the game. They know exactly, how to attack. That's with their eyes closed. The transitions are some of the best transitions in the whole of Europe. But they're much more solid. With Gravenberg in the middle, McAllister as well. This is a team that is solid, that doesn't expose themselves so badly. And I do believe that even though, as I said, there is more control and there is a team that defends better than last season, sometimes renewing faces and the leader, it's a good thing. I've got the impression that with Klopp, they had gone to a limit. The players there, and they signed 2 new players, Liverpool, and one of them is on loan to Valencia, Mamardashvili. It's the same group, but I feel that they had enough of Klopp. And I know there's a bit controversial because I love Klopp and what he's done, but he was very cleverly identifying the fact that he needed to step out for the team to keep growing. And I think when you've been giving orders to the same group of people for a long while, it gets to a point where it's like, enough. And I think that's where Liverpool was. But now with Slot, you get a different approach, a little bit more, I wouldn't say relaxed, but certainly there's a new developing of relationships and he's a very likable person as well, in a different way, less aggressive, if you like, as Klopp, and the harmony has returned to the team. So that's really, really important. So if we could have one more on the Premier League, one more question on the Premier League, and then move on to La Liga. Ropilal says, who is your Premier League player of the season so far? Wow. I love what Salah is doing. I love what Cole Palmer is doing. And perhaps I will give it to Cole Palmer just because he has changed a little bit the way he plays. And the Pochettino, he was more all over the place. And with Enzo Maresca, he's asking to fulfill a role. So he's got a smaller area of influence, but he's adapted to it in a magnificent way. That is enough. That area of influence is enough for him to do the work that he has to do without the ball, and with the ball to grow. And of course, the more time players are together, the more they understand each other, and that is happening. So that some of the success that's happening now has to do with Pochettino work previously. Maresca is more positional. There is more obligation to do a certain roles where you are, and the team is growing that way with players that are hungry to be successful, with a coach that is putting a lot of hours, and with Cole Palmer, that to me at the moment is the player of the season. So should we move to La Liga? Wow, we've done already almost 15 minutes. So we've got 10 more minutes to go. So RSN, Bellingham finally breaks his goal drought. Is that going to unlock Real Madrid now? Yeah, it's been a magnificent. In the last 7 games, he scored 6 goals. If I'm not mistaken, those 6 goals come from about 7 or 8 shots on target. Just magnificent. And what has happened is a couple of things. One, his position has become closer to the striker. He's been used on the right-hand side, deeper on the left-hand side. But I think Ancelotti is finding out that Bellingham likes to be free in whatever he decides he's got to play. And whatever he decides is not just with the aim to scoring goals. He does put a lot of running in. In fact, he's the player that runs the most at Real Madrid, generally, the one that puts more tackles in. So he's willing to put a shift in defensively. But he knows as well how to give fluidity to the side. And as there isn't an organizer like Kroos was, at least if the ball gets to Bellingham, he makes sense of it and he looks for options to open up defenses. And he himself is becoming a threat, which means that there is more space for Bellingham and for Vinicius as well. Against Atalanta, despite the injury of Mbappe, which doesn't seem very serious. We'll know more today, but certainly will miss the game at the weekend against Rayo Vallecano. He wants to be fit for the Intercontinental final in the 18th of December. Now, it's quite clear that despite the injury of Mbappe, for the first time this season, Mbappe, Vinicius, and Bellingham score goals. And they go to Atalanta, perhaps the team that was most informed in Europe, and beat Atalanta. They were a little bit lucky at times, not lucky. They required Courtois to save them once or twice, but generally they competed very well. And that comes on the back of a couple of defeats, Liverpool and Athletic Club, then a victory against Girona. So this is still not a solid Real Madrid, but one that Ancelotti is a bit happier because they run a bit more than they have been doing recently. There's more commitment to run and intensive run as well without the ball. So it's not just tracking back as soon as they lose the ball. They're trying to pressure high sometimes when it's required, and if they don't recover early, there's a lot of tracking back. There's a lot of work without the ball that is pleasing Ancelotti. They're more generous in the effort, and things are happening for them, even though they're still conceding far too many goals. Twice against Atalanta, perhaps away shouldn't be too much of a complaint, but twice against Athletic Club as well in San Mamés. So still not a consistent side, but they're benefiting from the fact that Barcelona is up and down at the moment with Hansi Flick, and another team that has taken advantage of this Barcelona not doing well is Atletico Madrid. Actually, we could go back into Atletico Madrid next, because I see what Real Madrid are doing and their difficulties. I see what Barcelona difficulties are, and we can get into those as well. But says in the lovely stats graphics that we put in as I'm talking, Simeone Athletic claimed their 10th win in a row in all competitions. Now, how did that manage? How did he manage to do that? First thing is relying on the players that do a lot with the ball. Relying on them, even though that's not Simeone's nature, because they do work really hard without the ball as well. So he's finally found a really good balance of players that do what he wants them to do, but also with the ball, they're able to unleash their talent. And that has come on the back of Pablo Barrios coming back to the side, the youngster in the midfield that gives a lot of fluidity to the team, but also a lot of hunger to get the ball back. But also with Giuliano Simeone, who's becoming a regular. He's even played as a right back, but of course he's a right winger, if you like, or right side of midfield. Not the most talented of players, but if you see almost every goal Atletico Madrid score, he's done something that has helped, either recovering the ball or making a run or just breaking into space to open up the defense. He's constant in his work, and he's given the side so much. And then, of course, Julian Alvarez, we knew he was going to come good. I knew he was going to come good. He's a top player with Griezmann, who understand each other so well. They're so invisible, difficult to track. What are they? Are they 10? Do they play between the lines? Oh, are they 9? They're a bit of everything. And both of them understand really well. The first goal of Julian Alvarez against Bratislava was just fantastic. Just didn't need much time to unleash a shot that went on the top corner. And with the goals of Griezmann, the goals of Julian Alvarez, the work of Giuliano Simeone, this is a team that not only scores, and that's it, and then they go back and defend their goal, they actually want more and more and more. So perfect balance for a side that didn't look so good at the beginning, but right now with 10 consecutive victories, they're giving themselves chances for everything, and they should grow because the squad is very deep. In fact, perhaps in La Liga, it's the deepest squad, or in terms of quality of the first 18, 19 players used. For me, it's the best one. So yeah, it's pleasing to see that Simeone is unleashing the attacking force of his team. Meanwhile, defending really, really well. And Oblak as well is another one that needs mentioning because he's actually doing really well. So sending you questions in the comments section. We've got a couple of minutes left. I think I've mentioned Barcelona. We should talk about Barcelona. 42 Media says, read about Barcelona trouble with registering Olmo in January. How does that happen mid-season, and will they have to sell Olmo then? That's a fascinating one. Barcelona, a team to do well financially and in the market, they need to be what La Liga calls the rule 1-on-1, which means that every euro that comes in from selling you players, you can use to buy players. But Barcelona haven't been in that rule for a while. They're not in that rule, and that means that they got to basically either sell an active of the club, another lever, and they're talking about perhaps selling the rights to the VIPs area boxes to somebody for 200 million. If that comes in, again, is a section of the club that's being sold. It's possible, but that will allow Barcelona to register Olmo. Without that, not even the Nike, very good Nike agreement that has been announced already, solves the financial difficulties. That means that they still got too much debt. They still have spent too much for Barcelona to go back to the rule 1-on-1. Basically, right now, yes, it means that if Olmo's not registered and they haven't found a solution yet, and they've got until the 31st of December, then he can go. Another thing is that if he would go, he would be free. He would be free. And then it's his decision to see what he wants to do next. Olmo was desperate to come to Barcelona. And basically, he thought that everything was going to be resolved. He knew he wasn't going to be registered as soon as he arrived, and it didn't happen for a while. But once registered, he thought it will all be sorted, and it's not sorted. He wants this sorted. He wants to be at Barcelona. He's become with Lamine Yamal and Pau Cubarsí, I would say, the three most important players, with Lewandowski perhaps and Rafinha, that those five players are absolutely crucial to the present of Barcelona. He wants to stay, but Barcelona have not got it sorted. So we'll keep an eye on that. As we are in Barcelona, do you want to know a little bit about my team, Espanyol, struggling, of course, because John Turner is asking, will Espanyol get relegated? Now, I want to say no. There's not enough evidence for that to be the case. I do believe we will struggle. And I do believe that if we go down, it could be financially a bit of a disaster because we're still in debt. But it may force the club to go all in with the academy and base our future on the academy, which is what the director of football, Frank Garagarza, wants to do anyway. It will force us to do that. And if it takes 1 or 2 years or 3 years to come into the first division again, that will be on the back of being a young side that has come through the academy, that excites the fans, and they're good enough to be in the first division. Every time we've gone down, we come up. I think it's 6 years that we've gone down, we come up the next year. But no, I'm not sure that it's what the club wants. The club doesn't want that, obviously. And you never know when you go that direction what's going to happen. But it looks bad. I think our manager's got one more game, and we may have a completely different manager. But that doesn't resolve the fact that with players that are on loan, that have come from with a free, that we've spent practically nothing, the quality of the squad is just simply not good enough. So we've gone 24 minutes. I think we're going to finish here. And there will be another Coffee with Guillem live next week, hopefully with internet, hopefully with better signal. But that's all for now. Remember, I am now on Blue Sky offering different things to X. For instance, we put a poll that I'd like you to help me with of which cover I should use for the Aston Villa game. I haven't talked about Aston Villa, but I'll do that next week. So for now, I'll see you next week.